Hello, everybody. I see you guys coming in, but I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me? Susan, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Hi. Hi. Hi, Susan, Brenda. It's good to see everybody today. Last time I wasn't able to see you all, so I'm very happy to have that. Let me see if I can switch the view.
Yes, good morning where you are. Good afternoon where I am.
I am in the afternoon in the East Coast. One more week, or a couple more days.
Where are you?
I'm in Boston right now, but I've been traveling a lot, so I've been like a moving target for this past month. But I'm returning to Israel tomorrow.
I'm jealous.
Yes. Yes. Where are you guys? You want to give me a little bit of a sense of where are we? Where's everybody?
I'm in Sarasota, Florida.
And that who's talking now?
Linda.
Linda. Linda in Florida, in Sarasota. Okay, who else?
And
Susan?
in Texas.
Brenda is in Texas. Okay, awesome. Carrie, you just came on video. Where are you?
Yeah,
from?
hi. I'm in
Hi.
Oakland, California.
Awesome. So cool. And Susan, where are you from? Where are
New
you?
York, I'm in New York City,
New York City.
where I live.
I just came from the city this morning.
Hello. Oh, hey, Sabrina.
Hi, Ed.
Hi, how you doing?
Hi, pretty good. How are you? This
I'm
is nice
good.
to meet you all.
Hmm.
So nice to have you.
It's good to join. It's fun. I'm gonna mute myself now.
Awesome. Well,
I
I
must
know
have
where you
fun.
live. I can track you down.
Right. Fine of that. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah. Right.
And I have Kathleen and Elaine also that I'm curious to know where you guys are joining from. Okay, maybe they're not by the computer at the moment. So I think we will start. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, we're good. Okay, perfect. So let's just start like we did a little bit last week, kind of like centering ourselves into the present moment to switch gears from whatever it was that we were doing to whatever it is that we want to do next, which is learn together. Hi, Kathleen.
Hi.
It's good to see the faces coming up on video. You know, maybe like one or three, let's take 5 minutes of like inward breathing, however you find for yourselves that you do best to bring yourselves into the present moment. I will set up the timer, we'll be quiet, and then we will begin, and we'll leave also time for people to join as they come. So I'll just get my phone and my timer. And I'm going to put it for 5 minutes. Okay. Enjoy the entry into the present. I will be switching into taking up the video if I can. Okay. My timer went off. I don't know if you heard it. I hope you had an opportunity really to kind of this, I don't know, what's the word? Bring ourselves down from all the happenings in our lives. I wanted to start today by kind of hearing a little bit from you, a little bit of feedback about our first session last week when we discussed this concept of Nikudot Tovot, good points. And we discussed also this idea of finding the good points, not in the big picture of how good a person is, but really in the smallest amount that we could find both in ourselves and in others. And then we very quickly, I felt like it was a little bit too quick for my liking, I have to say. We went into the application and trying to create a tefillah that would kind of reflect and express that new practice of looking for good points. And I just, I hope I'll give more time and more context for that today. I think it might be necessary. We'll see. But I wanted to hear from you guys. Did you use it? Did it come up at all during the week? It was Thanksgiving. For those of us who celebrate Thanksgiving, I'm sure there's always opportunities for using
Giving
Nikudot
thanks.
in those, family reunions for sure. So kind of curious to hear from you. How is this new concept, if it was new, or old concept, if it wasn't, resonating in your lives? Please, Linda. Yeah.
I found I did it with for two people, the thinking of positive things. And I find it's much easier if the person lives far away. But anyway, the further, the easier. But it really did make a difference. And I thought it made me more warm-hearted for the week. More open-hearted, I should say open-hearted. And my husband noticed the difference.
Oh,
So
wow. That's amazing.
that's very nice. Yeah. I didn't remember doing a tefillah with it. So
Uh-huh. That's
but
okay. I mean, it's
I'd like to hear that part again because I don't remember it.
yeah, we will review that. Any other kind of like desire to share? And I'm kind of also curious, did you do it with yourselves as well? Did anybody did a little bit of nekudot to vote with oneself at any point during this week? And how did that go?
I have a comment. It's not specifically on that.
Yes.
I've done this in the past a lot. I worked for the military for many years,
Mhm.
and it was not the right environment for me. So I would get irritated sometimes with the culture. So I would spend a lot of time thinking about, I work specifically with the Coast Guard. I would think about things that they do, you know, all the things, good things about the people that I was around, you know, whenever I would want to like judge them, I would just kind of try to think of the good things about them.
Uh-huh.
I think so. I think I've done this practice like a lot, and it is helpful. It's just sometimes I think, you know, I was using it to cover over the feeling I had that I was kind of trapped in that job, but it still was better than nothing to do that. So
Great. I mean, I think what you're referring to is like the one of the things that I really appreciate about these teachings and in general about Rabbi Nachman is that he doesn't shy away from difficulties when he's pointing us in the direction of positive thinking. It's not just a simple positive thinking and everything is okay, but we don't want to shy away from the, you know, as you said, right, Kathleen, like the feelings that this might not be the right environment for you. So as we do a practice of positivity, how do we still stay in touch with, you know, the issues that might be underlying the difficulties, right? So we don't want to become, I don't know, for lack of a better word, fake or not authentic to our own experiences.
I mean, it's not that I didn't believe that these people
Right.
had a lot of good in them. I really did believe it, and it helped me to remind myself.
Yes.
But it just, you know, I think in the long run, maybe it was something to, you know, like an escape for me.
Yeah. So I think it is important for me to have these like check-ins with you guys, because really the point of the learning of, you know, these Torahs in Rabbi Nachman is, as I said so many times last week, not just ideas and good ideas and profound ideas. And it's really, how do we put them into practice, and how do we put them into practice that is healthy, right? And it's like balanced and useful for us in our lives. That's the whole point and the mission, you know, that I'm, you know, set myself for. All right. So at any point, really, if you have any comments, please share. I'm aware of the balance between me teaching and me listening and creating a space where everybody can share, but also at the same time wanting to deliver a very, very profound and incredible material that I have every week, you know, ready for you. So we'll see how it goes as I get to know you and as I get to know the group. I'll be more skilled at that. So also bear with me. And if you have any comments about that particular issue, let me know. You know, you can either chat me privately or send me an email. Okay, so today we're kind of like moving direction, like making a big turn. Last week we were learning from Likutei Moharan, which is like Rabbi Nachman's main, you know, serious teachings of his Torah. And today we're going to be going into one of his stories. They're called in Hebrew, Sipurei Ma'asiyot. That's the name, the traditional name of the stories, the stories of the events or the happenings. I don't know exactly how to translate it. And Rabbi Nachman, we will read it inside. I just brought you a little bit of an introduction to how did Rabbi Nachman relate to his stories and what was the purpose of he telling stories. But he said at a certain point towards the end of his life, in the last 2 years of his life, he started telling stories to his Hasidim. And he said like that to him, says, listen, I've been trying to make you really special people and make you tzaddikim, all of you, but I'm not succeeding. So I'm going to stop telling you Torahs, which I didn't stop, but I'm going to start telling you stories. You know, I'm going to begin with the stories. So the stories was like an attempt from Rabbi Nachman to kind of like, again, go on the side and do a very, very different type of approach to touching his Hasidim, and not touching on an intellectual level, but really trying to bring in what Rabbi Nachman called, like, I want you to be tzaddikim. Tzaddikim in the sense of righteous people, upright people, the tzaddik, the righteous people that we all have inside of us, that kind of like, you know, ultimate expression of, you know, the best selves that we, each one of us can be in our own colors and ways and shapes. So everybody has the text. Yeah. All right. So let me just minimize a little bit to see myself the text. Just give me a quick second. I want to be able to see you guys. No, not this. Okay. We'll put it like this. No, I know what I'm doing. Just bear with me. I'm like in travel mode and not working with my a little smaller. I'm just minimizing this window so I can see the text and you guys at the same time. All right. So the first text that I brought from you is kind of like I think a good way to kind of introduce us to what was Rabbi Nachman trying to do.
Sabrina, could you
Yes.
screen share it again? Last time you put it up on the screen, I can't keep both screens open at the same time.
Okay, let me try to do that. Give me a quick second.
Thank
Yeah. Okay. Share screen. Okay, can everybody see it? Awesome. All right. So we're gonna, I always like to bring in the Hebrew, even though sometimes we use it and sometimes we don't. For those of you who are interested in really looking at things in their original format, in case you want to go back to it or you feel curious about something in particular. But we're going to go straight into the English because of time, and we have a lot of material to cover with the story itself. So going to the first text, number 1, but the second text itself, which is the translation. So this is actually not Rabbi Nachman talking, but it's Rav Nassan, Rabbi Nachman main student, explaining what Rabbi Nachman said about the purpose of the stories. And he says like this: because there are individuals that sleep during their days, and there are those who fall into a state of permanent sleep. By way of giving in to physical urges with food and so on. I just want to say that, you know, we have a picture that is running in the family chats after Thanksgiving, everybody on the couch, like passed out, you know, after the turkey and all the sugar and all the carbs and everything, like everybody like passed out from eating so much, right? So Rabbi Nachman or Rav Nassan here is talking about that there's different types of sleep. There's a sleep that we all sleep in, or sleep at night, but then there's another type of sleep where a person gives in, however we want to understand that, to the urges, to the physical urges or with food, that induce us into like a more permanent state of sleep, right? So it's not a literal being asleep, falling down asleep on the couch or in bed, but really a state of like kind of like not being fully awake, not being fully present, not being fully engaging in our lives. So in the same way that in physicality, certain foods induce sleep and others don't, so too in spiritual matters, there are foods that induce sleep, meaning the departure of consciousness and intellectual ability. So for Rabbi Nachman, or for Rav Nassan explaining Rabbi Nachman, we are talking about certain activities that happen physically, but also spiritually, that induce either an awakeness or induce a sleepiness. And the way that Rav Nassan here is describing this sleepiness has to do with departure of consciousness and intellectual ability. We're not thinking clearly, or we're not fully conscious in our actions, or even in our thinking. And now he's going to go into an explanation of what that means in kind of mystical terms. I'm going to read it, but we're not going to go into it because we don't have a lot of time to explain this. But I just wanted to be honest with the text and read it to the end. So this departure of consciousness and intellectual ability, which are an aspect of the face, which is associated with the concept of 70 faces of the Torah. As you might know, there are 70, traditionally, there are 70 different ways that Torah can be understood. And they're usually called Shivim Panim La Torah, 70 faces to the Torah. Not just one, but 70 facets of learning and approaching Torah. So when a person is asleep, they lose those 70 faces and they lose their face. That's what Rabbi Nachman is explaining in spiritual terms. And when a person loses all 70 faces, God forbid, meaning that he falls into sleep of 70 years, by means of Sipurei Masiot, which is the stories that we're going to be introducing today, one awakens from sleep. There are stories of recent days, and there are stories of ancient days. There's all kinds of different types of stories, but the stories that we're talking about, Sipurei Masiot, those are the latter and are higher than all the 70 faces of Torah, which is a very, very big statement that he's saying, that these stories are on a higher level than the 70 faces of Torah, those 70 aspects of the fullness of how we can understand Torah, because they are the source from which all the 70 faces of Torah receive from. So I feel like I'm reading something that I'm really not understanding what that means. How could the Sipurei Masiot, the stories of Rabbi Nachman, can be higher than the 70 faces of Torah? We're getting into very esoteric terms. And the reason why I brought it is just because, two reasons. One is because in Breslov Hasidut, for you to get a little bit of a taste of what is Breslov Hasidut, the stories are considered to be the highest form of teaching of Rabbi Nachman, higher than Likutei Moharan. So Breslovers, when they put a book on top of another, they put always Sipurei Masiot on top of Likutei Moharan. So in Breslov, they're considered to be the deepest and most profound teachings of the Rebbe. I also wanted to bring this kind of very esoteric description of Sipurei Masiot, even though we're not going to get into the meaning behind this correlation between 70 faces and losing one's face and sleep and all these things, because I want to give you also the beginning of a taste of entering into the world of Rabbi Nachman that contains, in my experience, always an element of mystery. Did you want to say anything? I saw you, Elaine, saying something, but I don't know if you had something to say. No, we're good. So again, if you have anything to say, just give me like a thumbs up or something, or alert me that you want to say something. I'm happy to receive comments as I go. But this element of mystery that Rabbi Nachman, I always experience learning Rabbi Nachman, is something that I find it to be a very positive aspect of learning Breslov Hasidut, because those mysteries eventually become clarified as you continue learning, and something that I didn't understand maybe a year ago becomes clearer this time around when I encounter this text again. And I find that just in general, learning anything that has value, anything that has depth, if it doesn't contain a certain element of mystery or a certain element of like it not being fully packed in and there's no little areas of like, questions or not fully grasped, then we're not really, I think, really learning or not really like pushing ourselves to the edge or to the limit of our understanding. So that is kind of like on purpose. I brought this for you to begin to see if you experience that as well in the way that I have it always experienced with Nachman. And to be open to that kind of experience that is not fully compacted and self-explanatory. Okay, so with that, with that mysterious 70 faces of the Torah and the 70 faces that we all have, that we lose when we fall asleep, and that introduction to being awakened, whatever that means. And we will talk about what that means to us at the end when we kind of process a little bit more the material. What is that awakening, and did that happen or didn't happen, or what do you think of this new modality of learning? Yes, Linda.
Are there 70 faces of names for Hashem? Is that another 70?
72.
72.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank
So,
you.
Yeah. So 72 faces or 72 aspects of the name of Hashem, or 72 names of Hashem's name, of God's name, and 70 panim la Torah, and 70 faces to Torah. It's like it's in the sages bring this concept. And it's a very evocative concept, obviously, right? Like, what does it mean that there's not one, but two, but three, but 70 different prisms or like, facets to this incredible experience of Torah. All right. So now we're going to go into, I think it's really my most favorite story in Sipurei Maaseh. And I'll say it's most my favorite because I love it, but also because it's very accessible. A lot of the stories are so imaginative, and it's stories within stories, and they're so Kabbalistically oriented that sometimes they're really, really hard to understand what he's trying to say, and it takes years of like approaching the story again and again and talking about that mystery. But this story is very simple and is very straightforward in a certain way, and at the same time, similarly to what we were doing last week, a simple concept that is extremely profound. So I'm going to start reading, and or maybe I wonder if you would want to read with me. How do you feel about that? Because I'm not a great reader. I'm a little bit dyslexic, so I don't always enjoy reading out loud. And if you guys want to do it, I might stop you to kind of like intercede if you don't mind. But I would love it if you would want to share with me the burden of the reading. Anyone? Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. Once there were two homeowners in a city which had great wealth, large houses, and two sons. That is, each one of them had a son. The two children learned together in the same schoolhouse. One of them was a Hakam, clever, smart, sophisticated, and wise, and the other was a Tam, simple, innocent, artless, wholesome. Not that he was a fool, rather his intellect was simple, without sophistication. The two sons loved each other very much. Even though one was a Chacham and the other was Tom, they nevertheless loved each other very much. Came a time when the two householders began to decline. They continued to decline until they lost everything and became destitute with nothing remaining but their houses. As the sons began to grow up, their fathers told them, "We do not have enough to pay for you, to sustain you. Do for yourselves what you can." Should I keep going?
Yeah, I think I'm going to be stopping in the next paragraph. But yeah, let's just finish this paragraph and we'll stop before 5.
The Tom went and learned shoemaking. The Hakam, who was a bar Havana, an astute, discerning person, didn't want to apply himself to such a common trade. He decided he would travel the world and see what to do. As he was going about the marketplace, he saw a large wagon with 4 horses in a harness speeding through. He called out to the merchants, "Where are you from?" They answered him, "From Warsaw." "Where are you going?" "To Warsaw." He asked them, Perhaps you need workers. They saw that he was astute, motivated, and looked good, so they accepted him. He traveled off with them and served them very well on the way.
Okay, let's just pause very briefly here for a second. So kind of recap a little bit, right? Like, so there's these two kids, that are growing up together. And one is described as chacham, sophisticated, wise, discerning, smart, go-getter, right? And the other one is a tam. Tam, which is, it was in the Parsha this week, is associated with Yaakov, somebody who's Tam simple. He said he wasn't stupid, but he didn't have, right, like he was like he had a simple mind. We'll see now, Rabbi Nachman is going to contrast the two in their trajectories in their lives. And he first introduces us the chacham, right, the sophisticated. So the tam, he tells us first, he becomes a shoemaker. And the chacham decides that he doesn't want to become something so simple, and he starts traveling and exploring the world. From the first description of the chacham that we have here, what do we get, from, what is he like? What would you say? What are his qualities? What is important to him? What are his values? What is his motive?
He's proud, isn't he? He's proud. He doesn't want to be a shoemaker.
Right. He doesn't want to be a shoemaker. You're saying he's proud. He's maybe like looking for, prove himself. I can do better than that, maybe.
But he does work.
He does work. Exactly. Right. Exactly. He goes for what he wants. He's not afraid to ask questions. He's not afraid to put himself out there. Yeah. He has ambitions. He has ambitions. He's looking for what is beyond the immediate horizon in a way that the chacham is not doing. That the tam is not doing. Okay, let's take it from here. Let's continue a little bit more, and then we'll see how the characters develop.
When they arrived in Warsaw, since he was a bar Havana, he decided, since I'm already in Warsaw, why should I remain with these merchants? Maybe there's a better place than with them. I shall go search and see. As he walked around in the marketplace, he began to investigate and inquire about the men who had brought him and whether there would be a better place than with them. They answered that these people who had brought him are honest people, and it's good to be with them. However, it is very difficult to be with them since their business dealings are in very distant places.
Okay, let's move on.
So he went on. He noticed clothing shop workers as they were going around in the marketplace with all their customary charm, with their caps and pointy shoes and the rest of the affectations and flair in their gait and appearance. Since he was so sharp and discerning, this occupation looked very proper, being pleasant and local. So he went to the men who brought him, gave him his praise and appreciation, but told them that it is not comfortable for him to be with them. As for recompense for them having brought him, he had served them on the road.
All right, so we see that he's like not easily satisfied, right? Like he continues to seek. He hasn't reached his goal. He doesn't, nothing yet is satisfying, his direction. So we see that he's looking for and continuing to grow. So number 7, if you're getting tired of reading, we can move on to somebody else. But if you're happy reading, it's beautiful to hear you reading.
Okay. So he went and offered himself to a proprietor. And the way with servants is, at first one has to be hired for less and do the heavier work. Then later one advances to better jobs. The proprietor would use him for very hard work, sending him off to nobility, carrying merchandise in the manner of servants, prominently displaying the garments on their extended arms. This work was very hard for him. Sometimes he needed to carry the merchandise to upper floors, and this work was very hard for him. He decided, since he was a philosopher, a discerning person, why do I need this work? Is not the main point the ultimate purpose? To get married and make a living? I don't need to see to that yet. I will be free for that later, in the years to come. Meanwhile, it would be better to travel, visiting countries, feasting my eyes on the world.
Okay, so now it's the first time that we get a little bit of like a self-reflection. I am a philosopher. I actually think about things. And even though I know that getting married is the ultimate purpose, but I'm not ready for that. And I'm just going to go continue feasting my eyes, right? Like now there's another element. It's not just the career or not just the, but it's like now I want to enjoy. I want to explore.
Then he philosophically decided, even though I have 2 trades in hand, who knows, perhaps neither of these will remain important. It would be better for me to learn a craft that will always be important. Probing with his insight and philosophy, he determined to learn medicine, which is always needed and always esteemed. Now, the way of learning medicine is to first learn Latin, the language and its writing, as well as the wisdoms of sophistry. And this too, on account of his brilliant mind, he mastered in a short time, a quarter year. And he became a big doctor, a philosopher, and expert in all fields of wisdom.
Okay, so a very accomplished person, smart, quick, and able to learn with depth.
After all this, the world began to seem in his eyes as nil. For due to his genius, and since he was such a great craftsman and so wise, and such a doctor, every person in the world was like nil to him. He decided that he would now accomplish the purpose and take a wife. He opined to himself, if I marry here, who will know what has become of me? Let me rather go back home so that people will see what has become of me. I left as a young boy and now I've come to such greatness. And he picked up and traveled home, experiencing great afflictions on the way. For on account of his sophistication, he didn't have anything in common with people about which to converse. He was so worldly and refined that he found no lodging up to his standards, and so he felt constantly afflicted.
Okay, so now he's going to go into the Tam. So let's just pause here and like kind of like recap and think together. What is Rabbi Nachman portraying? What is this character? Who is this character? And especially towards the end, when he starts telling us about his internal experience of how he sees the world after he has acquired so much knowledge and success.
What does nil mean?
Nil, I think, means nothing. Like,
Okay. Like the British nil.
is that British?
I've heard it only
Yeah.
I haven't heard it in the US.
Yeah.
I think I feel like since the beginning of the story, I don't know where the story will go and it may surprise me, but from the beginning of the story, I've been waiting for the Tam, the shoemaker, to, I don't want to say win, but have the better life in some way, because the Chacham seems to want more and more and more and more. It's never enough. And he has no signs of humility. He thinks he can do anything and nobody is quite good enough for him. I don't know if that's where the story will go. I'm actually really looking forward to seeing that because I didn't read it in advance. But that's what it feels very moralistic so far. And I feel as though I've read other stories about the same. When you want more and more and more, you're never satisfied. And Midas with the golden touch, you know, the one who turned the eggs to and then turned his daughter into gold.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So yeah, like it definitely feels like he's pointing us in this kind of very crafty like, yeah, let me tell you how bad it goes for this person of never being satisfied and what happens to him. And then when he tries to go home, he can't feel himself at home, and he can't even find a wife because nobody's good enough. And he's definitely portraying a character that is, like, on the one hand, extremely successful, but very flawed and in suffering in his own experience of life. I always say this when I teach these stories. Like, I have to say always that in a certain way, it also reminds me of me and our culture and what I would want my children to do. Yeah, go explore, go to Spain, go to this, go to that, and yeah, and why not? And why? And don't feel like you have a limit. And like, right? Like, it's such a modern value. Be sophisticated. Right? Like, I just come from New York, we're there for Thanksgiving, like sophistication, right? Like New York, right? Like we like that. We value that. We have affinity to that. Right.
I just moved to Manhattan.
Oh, there you go. Right. And it's like, the reason why I'm saying that is because it's very easy, right, to see the caricature of the sophisticated and say, yeah, poor guy, right? Like, he's lost in his own pursuit of refining himself. But I think that we all have that pursuit in a certain way, right? So how do we do it in a way that is not a caricature? And how do we do it in a way, again, thinking about balance? So I think that on the one hand, it could be simplistic to kind of like dismiss the Chacham and say, we know he's, like, I didn't bring you the whole story, and I will send you a link to the whole story after our session today, but you will see, like, it gets really bad, right? And you already, Elaine, you're seeing, like, it's just not going in a good direction. But it's so important to recognize the subtleties here, and to recognize one of the things that I said also last session. Rabbi Nachman is a modern teacher because he talks through this story, for example, to us, to the pursuit of, like, and now the master's, and now the PhD, and now we're going to become a lawyer or a doctor, and like, I'm going to just go, and our kids are like, go, right? And we're afraid that we don't have enough, and like that very modern experience of not being able to settle down and be satisfied and be in the moment, and to acknowledge our limitations, is something that Rabbi Nachman is already addressing 200 years ago in this story, in a very kind of black and white. But I think for me personally, it's very important to acknowledge that in a certain way, I can identify a lot more with the sophisticated than with it, right? And that the learning is, how do I incorporate more of the time, as you will see now. And you will see that the time is very difficult to incorporate, at least for me, or you'll see. I mean, I'm not gonna. Okay, let's move into the town, because I see the time running out of my fingers. Who would like to lead?
For someone else to take over.
Yeah.
Who else want to do it?
Would like to
I feel like we need a different reader.
I don't mind. I can do it.
Please.
Yeah.
So
Me?
we're on 13. Yes.
Shall I?
Yes.
So starting at 13 is where I'm starting. Yeah. For now, let us set aside the story of the clever man, and we will begin to tell the story of the simple man. The simple man learned shoemaking, and since he was a simple person, he had to study the trade a great deal until he got it. And even then, he did not have a complete expertise in the craft. He took a wife, and he sustained himself from his work. And since he was a simple person and was not such an expert, therefore his livelihood came with a great deal of pressing and was very limited. He didn't even have time to eat because he always had to work, due to his inability to be more proficient in his craft. Only while he was working, when he had inserted the nail and pulled the cobbler's thread, only then would he take a bite of a piece of bread and eat. The simple man's customary behavior was to be always very joyful. He was constantly full of happiness. and he had all the food, all the drinks, and all the clothing. He would say to his wife, "My wife, give me to eat," and she would give him a piece of bread, and he ate. Then he would say, "Give me the sauce with buckwheat groats," and she would cut him off another slice of bread, and he ate. And he would praise and say, "How very good and nice is this sauce." Similarly, he would order himself served meat and other delicacies, and for each dish she would give him a slice of bread from which he would have great pleasure and give great praise. How well prepared this is, as if he had actually eaten that very dish. For he would really and truly feel in the bread that he ate the taste of all the foods he wanted. On account of his great temimut, the quality of being tam, simplicity, wholesomeness, naivety, innocence, and his immense joy. He's a very lucky guy. That's Elaine interspersing here, but he sounds very blessed. And similarly, he would say, "My wife, give me a drink of beer." She would give him water, and he would praise, "How nice is this beer?" Then he would summon, "Give me mead." She gave him water, and he would praise it the same way. "Give me wine or other drink." She gave him water, and he would delight in and praise the drink as if he really drank wine or whatever else he had asked for. So too with clothing. He and his wife shared one peltz, a pelt coat, an unpieced piece of fur used as a coat. He would say, "My wife, give me the pelts," when he needed it, namely to go to the market. She would give him the pelts. When he needed a tulip, which is a fancy overcoat with fine fur on the inside, which rolls over onto the collar, to go out socially, he would say, "My wife, give me the tulip," and she would give him the pelts. He would take great delight in it and praise, "What a beautiful tulip this is." When he needed a kaftan, for instance, to go to synagogue, he would summon and say, "My wife, give me the kaftan," and she would give him the pelts. He would praise and say, "How nice and beautiful is this kaftan." And so too, when he needed to don a yuppah, she would also give him the pelts, and he would also give praise and delight. "How beautiful and nice is this yuppah," and the like. Thus he was full only of joy and delight constantly.
All right, Elaine, let's pause here for a second. Now we're going to go into the next section, and I want to. So Rabbi Nachman is taking time and space in the written page to give us examples of his eating, right? His drinking, his clothing, and it's repeating the same pattern, right? Which is, how would you describe it? How would you characterize it? He's joyful, right? You said he's a lucky guy. He can draw joy from this. What would you say about him, though?
I would say that he has a way of being that's infused with delight and praise and a kind of presence.
Yes.
So there's an increased kind of awareness and sense of connection that he's living with.
Uh-huh. Sense of connection to the experience of enjoyment, maybe? Is that what you're saying? Carrie, it's like,
Yeah, I was just thinking, connection to like life, capital L. To like being provided for, to nourishment, to love, like the bigger connection, perhaps. It's not said explicitly in there. That's something I'm bringing into it.
yeah. And if just for the sake of the argument, right? Like if I play devil's advocate here a little bit, and I say to you all, isn't he delusional? Like, really? Is that?
Say more.
Well, he keeps on not seeing reality. He keeps on like, wife, bring me the beer. And she brings him the water and he thinks it's beer. And the same with the meat, and the same with the meat, and the same with the pelts and right? Like is he in touch with reality? what kind of reality is he in touch with? Is this his imagination? Like how, like, do you see that also? I always
Yeah.
struggle with that personally, and I still do. Like,
Well,
what's
can I respond to that?
this?
Yeah, that's one, I would say like that's one way to look at it. You could totally look at it that way. I think for me, I relate to both of these characters, like the wrestling inside myself. And so if I want the beer of life and life gives me water, if I'm mad I didn't get the beer, that's a choice that I have. That's my part of my way of being, and that's going to lead to a certain kind of life and experience of life. But if I am grateful and delight in what I am receiving, and I can see it that way and embody it that way, that's going to lead to a different kind of life. And for me, a life of more peace, of feeling blessed. So I think I can recognize it's not what I thought I wanted, but it's nourishing me, maybe in ways that I couldn't have imagined too. Maybe this is what I needed that I didn't know I needed.
Uh-huh. I see.
I don't know.
And yet, Carrie, he's like, because I'm Jewish and I like to push, right? Like he's not saying, "Give me the beer," and she brings him the water, and she's like, "Oh, okay, fine. I can let go of the beer. I'll drink the water. What a gorgeous water, right? Fresh and delicious and pure." He thinks he's like, "What a beer! What a great beer!" He's still holding on to what he wanted.
Oh yeah.
Right? He's holding on to what he wanted, which is the beer, and he's tasting the beer.
But we don't know that.
So
We
You don't
don't know.
that.
We don't know he tastes beer. We know that he's choosing to experience it as beer.
Okay. Okay. Very possible, right? So it's now clear, right? Beautiful, great insight, Linda. Yes.
Maybe it's saying that joy is a higher issue than reality of what the beer is or what the clothing is or what the other things is that the sense of joy and delight are higher. I can't think of the word, higher things.
I agree.
You
I use
agree.
this phrase way of being. I think this is about how we are in the world. And the word praise in here, I think, is really important too.
Yes. Yes. You want to say something about that? I'm glad you brought it up.
Well, I'm connecting to it in my own life. The more that I've learned to delight in the phrase delight in and praise, and especially like praise and like thank you, like wow. I connect to a sense of awe almost, which is also connected to Chokmah. Like, yeah, it's just changed my life. I think that there's a way that these are sort of medicines. They're like antidotes or medicines. They're a way that might not lead as much to depression as the other way might.
So again, I wish we really had a little bit more time than we have. So we're going to jump into my most favorite. I'll tell you that I use this in my conversations with friends and my conversations with my husband, my children. It's like we often talk about this scene, the next scene that we're going to see, because it's like profound. Who would like to read it? It's the last piece that we're going to read of the story. And I think you'll see it's just exquisite. Who wants to read it? Elaine, I think it's you.
Okay. When he would finish a shoe, and the shoe probably had 3 corners, that is, it was not symmetrical, since he did not have complete proficiency in his craft, he would take the shoe in his hand and praise it highly. And he would take great pleasure from it and would say, "My wife, how beautiful and wonderful is this shoe. How sweet it is. What a honey, what a sugary shoe this is. She would ask him, if that is so, why do other shoemakers take 3 gulden for a pair of shoes, and you take only half a thaler, which is 1.5 gulden? He replied, what's that to me? That's the other person's business, and this is my business. And besides, why do we have to talk about other people? Let's just start calculating how much I can earn with this shoe from hand to hand, meaning from his hand to the hand of the customer, i.e. considering all factors in the process of making and selling the shoe. The leather costs me this much, tar and thread cost this much, the filling between the skins this much, and likewise other items this much. Comes out that I profit 10 groschen from hand to hand. And with such a profit from hand to hand, what is there to be concerned about? Can you scroll it more, please?
That's it. That's the end
Oh,
of
that's it.
text. Yeah, that's, I mean,
Oh.
it continues, but this
That's
is,
a challenging paragraph.
okay, let's go into it. What's challenging?
Oh, well, for me personally, in the earlier paragraph, it just seemed like such a blessing that his imagination could create beer out of water. Like, what a blessing. How lucky is that? My brain won't do that. In this paragraph, I'm guessing that 10 groschen is not going to feed his family. So he's hardly making any money. I don't know if that's right and if that's what evolves, but here here it feels more like a delusion, even though it's really the same process. And it seems to be leading not to a place of blessing, but to a place of poverty. So that's
How you're seeing it.
yeah, I guess you're not.
Well, I'm glad that you bring it up like that. You know, like I just want to hear like your responses. You know, it's like we all have the ways in which we're touched by different texts, and these texts are supposed to awaken us. So I'm curious to see how you read it. I will share my insights and why I love this so much, obviously. But I
Do
wanted
you
to
know if 10 groschen is enough to
Okay.
feed his family?
So, I mean,
That's-
definitely they're not rich because they didn't have beer and they didn't have many coats and he didn't have meat, right? Like, so they're living in very, very, very simple, with very simple standards. So we know that he's not making big money out of his shoemaking.
But even
However, he
adequate
talks-
money.
However,
Is
he
he
talked about a profit, with such a profit from hand to hand. So he's aware that he's making some money. He's aware that he's, you know, it's interesting to see the Carol, just a second. Within the context of the story, it's interesting to see that he's, again, not stupid, because he's not just being delusional, saying, I don't care if I don't make any profit. I just love my shoe, right? He's not saying this. Says, no, look, this is what it costs. This is what it costs. It's at the end. This is the, what is it called? You know, I can't remember the words, but like for like when the business, you know, is viable or not viable.
Cash flow.
Cash flow, nothing, yeah, we'll call it as that. Yeah, it's producing some cash flow, it's producing some benefit, some money. Is that enough or not enough? It definitely is not a lot, because we know that they don't have a lot of fancy to go around. But he's saying, I'm making enough, or at least as he's saying, I'm making a profit. But I want to go back to like the whole thing and hear other people's, and I know that Carrie wanted to say something.
Yeah, this paragraph really spoke to the theme of enoughness that you shared earlier about. I also thought it was really beautiful that he's saying, I'm not going to compare myself to other shoemakers. I'm going to just like look at myself and my costs and what I need and like set his prices that way.
Yes. Yes. So there's this idea of comparison, right? Like where the sophisticated, the chacham is constantly comparing himself to others, right? Am I, is this good enough for me? I'm seeing what is there. I'm always in a sense of like measuring myself against others. The chacham, the tam is completely doing the opposite. It's like, why should I? This is my shoe and this is their shoe. This is what I produce, this is what I make, and this is what they make. Why, like we're talking about, two different universes of realities. This is what I make, this is the type of shoe that I make. And I find it like so important, like we are driven so much by comparisons, especially the social media. Like we're in such a world of like constantly measuring ourselves against others, which is not necessarily a bad thing, except when it takes you away from acknowledging what you make and the produce and the product of your hands. And I just want to, because of time, unfortunately, kind of like force the process of unpacking this and making a little bit faster. How does he relate to what he makes? Like, how does Rabbi Nachman portray it? First, he tells us that what? Is he making very good quality shoes? Not really, right? He's not really the best shoemaker in town. Like he makes shoes that are like uneven and they have 3 points, like they're not even well made. Right. So he's already establishing that, yeah, we're talking about somebody who's like not a genius, in contrast to, his friend. And he's like very on imperfect shoes. Similarly to, I think, our lives, our imperfect lives. All as much as we try to do good and as much as we try, oftentimes we fall short. We don't do it perfectly. And I think it's giving way to create a reality where somebody can not be perfect, not produce perfection, even less than perfection, kind of like sub, a quality product, and still feel proud of what he makes. And that's a very high level. To feel proud of what you make because you're doing, this is exactly what you know how to make, and this is exactly what you make. And to allow yourself to feel proud, even though your wife is comparing your shoe to somebody else. And how does he describe his shoe? I mean, for me, I can cry, when I hear that, and it's such a good thing for me to remember. Look at this shoe. What does he say? He would take the shoe in his hand and praise it highly. Stand by it. And he would take great pleasure from it. And he would say, my wife, how beautiful and wonderful is this shoe? How sweet is it? What a honey. What a sugary shoe this is. Like, and in the Hebrew, it's beautiful. It's like, it's a sukar midvash. I think that's it's like, I love it. I love it. I love this like imperfect thing that I've made. I can derive pleasure from it, not just from my imagination and my ability to translate, what I get versus what I want, but also about myself. It doesn't matter that others make better shoes than I. It doesn't matter that others can make more money making shoes than I, because I'm so proud of what I make. I oftentimes in my own life, when I feel and I compare myself to my friends who are doing this or doing that, or these people who are doing this and are doing that, and I look at myself and say, for so many years, right? And I think still, like, oh my God, what a schlepper, or what a, right? Or I didn't, but then I remember the time. And I remember, and I have this image of like, no, but this is my shoe. In parenting, like in ways that I fall short of being a good mom, or in ways that I fall short of being a wife, or fall short of being a therapist, or fall short of being a teacher. Like, okay, yeah, we want to improve. But if we don't start with this ability to say, just nekudot tovot in a certain way that we were talking about yesterday, The ability to say, it's not perfect, and yet I love it. It's a very, very deep, deep teaching here. I can love imperfection fully and not, right? And Rabbi Nachman is saying, no, he makes really bad shoes. They're really bad. They're not good. They're like 3-pointy, but he loves them. It's like, can I make a soup and forget to put the salt and still say, this soup is actually really good, right? Like, can I do that? Not really. I'm really, really, critical with my cooking, but like, right? But that, or can I do that to my child? Can I also project that to my children? Or can I also project that to my clients? It doesn't have to be perfect to be good. And to draw pleasure from it. And to look at it with delight and say, look what I made. Are there any artists in this group? For artists especially, right? There we go. It's such a hard thing.
Well,
So-
as an artist, reading this, the fact that the Tom does not seem to be interested in perfecting or getting better at what he's doing, that's very troubling to me.
uh-huh.
I don't identify with that, and I don't want to identify with that.
Right, so that kind of stuckness. So it's true that in this part of the story, and I'm glad you brought that up, Susan, it feels like, wait, you don't want to improve? Like what, like you want to stay
Right.
stuck in mediocrity for the rest of your life? That's a terrible message, right? And we don't want that. Because of time and everything, we don't have the whole arc of development of this character, but with the story, you will see that he does develop and he does get better, right? So it's true, there's definitely a criticism in place in this stage of the story about that, but this is not the end. This is just the beginning of the project, of the movement of this character. But again, I think the question still remains, right? How can we grow and still accept the imperfection that we currently produce? Right? Do we grow when we are critical about ourselves, or do we grow when we accept ourselves?
It could be either.
Yeah.
Sometimes criticism pushes us to grow, even though it's not a very positive thing, but if it's honest, sometimes criticisms are, I think Susan's point is, I would agree with that. If he's an artist, I don't think he is though. I don't hear this person as an artist. And I'm still a little bit stuck on whether the 10 groschen will feed his family. Like, that's really important. You have to feed your family. So if your positive attitude takes you into deep poverty, I don't think that's a good outcome either.
So just to let you know, in the story, he becomes, the mayor of the town, and then he becomes the second.
Okay, so that 10 groschen went far enough. Okay,
Yeah,
I
so
feel
because-
better.
No, yeah. So again, it's also good always to see the stories in their created universe, right? This is the teaching that Rabbi Nachman is trying to convey within the story, and this is how he's portraying, and this is the development of these character, right? So the Tam becomes, the second to the king, and the trustworthy this, and he becomes very capable and functional and smart in that way within his simplicity, and the Chacham ends up losing himself in this pursuit of the next thing, and his inability to make connections to the world outside of him. So it's a fascinating story, and he definitely doesn't stay in poverty. And Rabbi Nachman, I guess, chooses to tell a story about a Tam that is extremely successful, right? But that begins here and doesn't lose this. he continues to be a Tan throughout the story in different ways and with a different type of experience. I will send you. Is anybody in this group that is not in the group chat in the WhatsApp group? Are you all here? Are you all in the WhatsApp group? Yeah.
I'm not in the WhatsApp group.
I'm not either because I don't have WhatsApp. I'll have to get somebody to download WhatsApp for me.
Yeah, I don't have it either.
You don't have it either. So I will add you to the WhatsApp for those who can do WhatsApp, but I will also send you the link to the full story. So you can read it in your spare time if you feel like inclined to do so. Okay. I just want to also now, like really, I'm so sorry. I feel like I get carried away with the text, and I want to give more time to the integration part, right? Like how do we turn, what do we take, what is the nugget that we take with us from the story that is applicable to our lives, that can serve us well? With all the questions, right, and other places where we feel like, well, you know, he's not growing enough, or he's staying stuck, and he's not willing to look at deficiencies, and therefore, is he growing, not growing? We still have questions, and it's okay to have those questions, and many others that you might have not shared. But within it, is there anything that you feel that is like worthwhile for you to dedicate some focused attention this week that would serve you well in your personal development and in your spiritual development? That you might want to kind of like, you know, let's take a minute and quiet, you know, without sharing, to think it through for a second. I'll be keeping track of time. Because it's so important to have it in our pockets before we. Anyone would like to share one, like the piece that they take home with them?
Well, I think the story is really valuable, not only for that being comfortable with imperfection as sort of a lesson, but I really love clothes, and I've been noticing more and more how I really want to right size my closet so that it's just, you know, exactly what fits, literally what fits, and you know, because I change sizes sometimes, but yeah, I think it's really a fun story for that. And I think from what I remember about his biography, it's based in some reality, that he had a lot of conversations with doctors in Lviv, in Lemberg, where he went to get some treatment, you know, and he really liked to go at it with these modern people.
Yes, it's definitely that, for sure. He didn't like it very much. He didn't, that's another, like a whole other topic. But yeah, and he did have to go to doctors also, and he, you know, yeah, there's definitely like a certain background here. So.
Did Rabbi Nachman suffer from depression himself? Is that known?
That's such an important question, Elaine. And it's like there's a book called Tormented Master by Art Green. Arthur, I think is his name. Art. Who it was his who posits that Rabbi Nachman struggled with depression. I think that's one way to look at it. Now, the way that I would like to answer that question in a very, very like at the last minute type of thing is that, and I think we talked about it a little bit last week, maybe not, I can't remember now. Depression is a modern concept. And it's a modern articulation of a particular state of experience, outlook, right? It's so to try to say that from our modern view of depression, Rabbi Nachman was depressed is a little bit of it's a simplification in a certain way. Rabbi Nachman definitely shared with his Hasidim low states, right, of negative feelings and sadness, and after the death of his son, like at different moments in life, he shared feeling despondent and feeling like broken and feeling, so there was that for sure, and he was very honest about that. In the same, and that's why Rabbi Nachman can speak to us, because he was very open about brokenness. On the other hand, to call that depression in a certain way, I think it kind of minimizes and gives us a sense of like, I think it diminishes the incredible capacity of Rabbi Nachman, in my own opinion. So was he, I wasn't there, I cannot say, with the tools that he had those days, can we really extrapolate? I just struggle with that, with that description or frame. But at the same time, Rabbi Nachman was shared often where he was at emotionally. So, but we will talk about that in other sessions when we talk about the broken heart. And yeah, Linda, please.
It certainly makes me feel like any judgments I'm making about my life are perhaps not real, not that they're not real, not useful, not the end of the story, or not anyway, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that what I hear you say, maybe it's like they can be revisited. Right, like we can revisit those places and kind of look at them and say, well, how is this serving me? Kind of like make a assessment about it, right? Like, kind of, kind of being able to look at it from the outside and say, well, let me think about this. The way that I'm judging myself, the way that I'm judging my production, the way that I'm judging my interactions, right?
Right.
The Tam is offering us a little bit of a reflection of our harsh, the way that we tend to be so harsh with ourselves and so unforgiving. And again, we're not talking here about mediocrity. Rabbi Nachman was not a mediocre person, and he didn't want his Hasidim to be mediocre. He wanted his Hasidim to be masters, right? And a lot of them were, right, in their own way. So, but how to get there, right? And I think there's like a very important balance between seeking excellence and not giving up on ourselves and saying, no, I can do better, but not with the kind of like self-criticism and alienation that results in the chacham. Like we're talking about, like a portrayal, a comparison between very extreme ways of responding to ourselves and responding to the world. And there is what to learn for me in my identification with the chacham in a certain way, and my desire to become more able to experience the joy of the simple glass of water, right? And in the experience of say, I stand behind 100% in what I've made, even if it's imperfect. In all aspects, in those 70 aspects of my life, right? And that takes a lifetime to acquire. But we're not going for mediocrity, we're going for excellence. But the question is, what kind of excellence are we talking about, and how to get there in a way that is healthy? Okay. We didn't get to a tefillah. Ay, ay, ay. Yeah. I think it is very, like, I think next week I'm going to go for, like, we're going to talk about tefillah. I think, I don't know, I have to feel it out a little bit and kind of like dive into creating these like personal prayers, because I really believe that even like a one sentence prayer, again, creating that one sentence instruction, like intention, can really be very beneficial and can make a big difference, as we spend these weeks together. So I'll leave it as that. I will send you guys the rest of the story in the link from Safaria. And again, if you have any questions or any comments or anything, please let me know through WhatsApp or through one-on-one email. I'll be thrilled to hear from you guys. Have a good week, everyone. I'll see you guys.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
It's good to
Thank
see you.
you.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.